Okay, Lyme disease, immune suppression versus autoimmunity. I'm Dr. Martin Rutherford, certified functional medicine practitioner, chiropractor.
Dr. Randall Gates, board certified chiropractic neurologist, also a chiropractor.
And every time we do something like this on Lyme, we realize that we're kind of entering into a field with a lot of controversy. More than that, a lot of passionate opinions, a lot of conflicting data. And we're just trying to help out so that the different factions can maybe have another piece of data based on what we have seen in clinical practice. We have a chronic pain practice, and it just kind of evolved a little bit on its own. We did start out with dizziness, vertigo, balance, migraines. We did delve into fibromyalgia, which ultimately is what led us to Lyme. We have a paradigm that we have put together, combining brain rehabilitation work and working with stress responses, and as well as many of the other things that you've heard of in the functional field, everything from the leaky guts to the food sensitivities. But we've put it together in a very specific process. I think our diagnostic protocols are very sound. And Dr. Gates is like our R&D department, research and development, and he has done an enormous amount of research on it.
And that's why I pulled out my cell phone, just so you know.
And that's why you what?
I just pulled out my cell phone because I was trying to remember the
I knew
article.
that.
Okay,
I knew
so
that
they know that I'm not being disrespectful to the discussion.
So in the end, we started treating fibromyalgia patients years ago, probably 9 years ago. And a lot of them had diagnoses of Lyme. I mean, with all due respect, I didn't even know what Lyme was.
Well, you know what Lyme was, but you didn't know.
Well, I didn't know the nuances of Lyme by any means. I would just kind of reject that. When Dr. Gates got here, we just kind of rejected that. Not rejected it. That's the wrong term. Okay, we would say to patients, look, we kind of feel like we have a grip on fibromyalgia, and we feel like we're going in the right direction on helping to get this thing under control and giving you the tools to control it. But we really aren't treating you for Lyme. That would be more accurate.
That was what
okay, that's what we did. We said, we're not treating you for Lyme. It's not our area. We're not an infectious disease doctors. And as we continue to fine tune what we were doing for fibromyalgia, the Lyme symptoms were going away. Okay, to varying degrees in varying patients, and some tremendously, but most of them fairly quickly. You know, usually at that point in time, within a year or so. I think now, for the most part, within about 4 to 5 months, when we take on a Lyme patient, our results are pretty consistently good, and we can usually get that person to where they're going to get. Our position is you're probably not going to cure it unless you get it in the acute phase, but in about 4.5 to 5 months. So we understand all the controversies out there. We've done Lyme before. We understand there's the researchers who some still question whether Lyme even exists. We understand that there's the Lyme literate doctors who vary from it's all Lyme to everything is Lyme to we have to kill the bacteria and the co-infections, to immune suppression group, to the group who probably thinks everybody's crazy and just figures I got something and I have to live with it. And that's the group we're probably talking to the most here today, is that third group. But in the end, Doug Gates has been researching this extensively. I must admit, I've watched some videos on Lyme. I've watched a ton on fibromyalgia online. And I must say, I do kind of at some point, if the person doesn't have, in my opinion, and my opinion is just my opinion on this, okay? I mean, it's not like the law, but I know what it's taken for us to get where we are and to get the results that we're getting. And to me, when I start watching videos from people who I don't believe have the background to be able to look into the literature and have the background to make a strong opinion whether it's valid or not, I stop watching. And because I understand what it takes to look at a research paper and understand it, and be able to understand what that researcher's position is, and then take that and put it up, in our case, against what we see clinically every day. And just to say this, and clinical results frequently are the ultimate drivers for research, okay? So usually maybe curious doctors are going to try some things. It's going to start to work. They're going to get slapped around. They're going to be told they're crazy. They're going to be attacked. We know. And they just keep doing what they're doing because their patients are continually improving and they're finding better. And then suddenly it becomes embraced. Leaky gut's a perfect example of that. Everybody thought that leaky gut was a joke. And now everybody in the research refers to leaky gut. And now every pamphlet I get in the mail from every vitamin company is telling me how to heal leaky gut. We've been dealing with leaky gut for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And I think the Lyme thing is going to be kind of the same. Anyway, this is for those people who have an open mind, okay, who want to really understand where this is going. And what Dr. Gates is going to present to you is where this is going. He's going to present the research as it is today, as we understand it, and as it's applied in this clinic pretty consistently, successfully. He's going to share this with you. And it's pretty impressive to me, the data that has been researched and how it comes together to, frankly, kind of support what we're seeing in our patients. But there are a lot of questions still, and Dr. Gates will present that.
Yeah, and we're digging into this subject. Clearly, all doctors are educated on Lyme disease. I mean, we all learned that. And like Dr. Rutherford said, I'm just going to
to varying degrees.
To varying degrees.
Right.
We all know Borrelia causes Lyme. We know the acute stage. We heard of the chronic stages, which I get it. A lot of you, if you could just put aside your nomenclature for a second, because so many people are, when we do these broadcasts, they get very almost angry. You know, if you talk about post-Lyme or chronic Lyme or these different topics, you know what we mean. There are different phrases for it. But we're all aware of Lyme, and like you said, we just kind of happened to start treating Lyme patients with our model, which was a functional medicine, functional neurology model, a focus on autoimmune disease, a focus on rehabbing parts of the brain that are not working, calming down stress responses. And we were seeing phenomenal results. Patients who had spent $500,000, $1 million on antibiotic therapies, better. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of antibiotic therapy. On average, I would say probably most of our Lyme patients have spent around $200,000 on treatment, which is low.
Before they got here, right?
Yeah, that's probably the mean amount, not the median. So we were pretty amazed by this. And then we come out and we do this broadcast end of February, I think, 2016, about an article talking about Lyme disease being an autoimmune problem, which very much fit with our model and very much fit with the results we were seeing. And, you know, when you come upon a discovery, you have to say, okay, what just happened? Like, you have to have an explanation for it. But unfortunately, a lot of people are so entrenched in their viewpoints, and we get it. You talked about it extensively in that 3-part article that you wrote about. We get, and I'm just going to go on a tangent, we get that you're the Lyme patient, you've been everywhere, you've seen everybody, you've seen infectious disease specialists, you've been blown off maybe by them, maybe you were blown off by other doctors saying Lyme isn't in your area, there's no way you can have chronic Lyme or post-treatment Lyme syndrome, whatever the phraseology is there. And so because of that, then you sought the counsel of maybe somebody who was open to that, one of these Lyme literate medical doctors, and alas, you take a test that per their world and their criteria, they're saying you do have Lyme disease. Oh, and you have all these co-infections. This is this great masquerader of all these other diseases, and your fibromyalgia or your MS or your Lou Gehrig's or your chronic migraines. It's actually, or your POTS, it's Lyme disease. And so because of that, you get entrenched in a paradigm that you have to take rounds and rounds and rounds of antibiotics to help your situation, because the Lyme bacteria evades the immune system. It goes in and out of bodily tissue. So you have to pulse these antibiotics, so on and so forth. We're not necessarily arguing any of that, but we are saying is that here we are, we're not using antibiotics. We're treating all these people with Lyme disease who are getting better. And I know you just said that, but I just felt like I needed to say it again to open up to what I'm going to go into. So from that, we got voraciously attacked when we came out with this data, which is, you know, these are revolutionary findings out of the Journal of Autoimmunity. It was in 2016. The original publication was in February. Later, it was officially published, I think, in May or June, where they definitively showed that there's an autoimmune arthritis, autoimmune, not just a bacterial arthritis, but an autoimmune arthritis to MMP10 and Lyme patients. Now, from there, so many...
MMP10 is an enzyme in your joints.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. From there, so many of you said, well, you know, that's only 15% of the Lyme cases. Most of us are suffering with Lyme neuroborreliosis. And so it's a neurological condition. So this doesn't really apply, and we're immunosuppressed. And so from this, even though we've been voraciously attacked, this has been really good because you can't look at something objectively until you really see what the other person is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing now. We're trying to get into the mindset, the paradigm shifts that a lot of you have undergone and your journey through Lyme. And we're finding, you know, people are recommending videos to us, and we're open. We're watching these videos. And even though some of your concepts may be based in conspiracy theory has a very pejorative connotation to it, just as a term. We're not saying that these conspiracy theories are correct about Lyme disease or incorrect, but I just want to understand where you're coming from. So from that, and we're going to keep talking about this too, these different aspects of the Lyme disease. I want to go to the beginning and fully embrace everything you're saying, because too, what Dr. Rutherford was saying is that in some of these documentaries, there may be far-reaching conclusions on some of the studies that are looked at. Certainly, I see where people are coming from about, you know, the Lyme vaccine, and then from there we have this criteria set forth by our major infectious disease society for a type of arthritis where they're trying to sell vaccines. That's neither here nor there for me to say if that's the truth, but it is important because that's your concept and that's your justification for a different type of testing, which has a different type of criteria for evaluation thereof if you have Lyme disease or not. So that brings us to this whole concept of Lyme disease. Is it an immunosuppressive illness? Is it a chronic bacterial infection? Is it an autoimmune problem? Maybe it's a mix of the three, but I would say it's primarily an autoimmune illness with an immunosuppressive component. Now, on the immunosuppressive component, and we did a broadcast on this, most Lyme literate medical doctors that we see validate this immunosuppressive component through assessing CD57 cells. It's a type of immune cell, and they're saying there was some research that came out that showed that a lot of Lyme patients had low CD57 counts. There was other research coming out saying that really wasn't the case. But, as was so kindly pointed out in one of our previous broadcasts where we were somewhat attacked, one individual brought up these studies out of UC Davis. So I think we need to go into this because this is important. So the study out of UC Davis, or these studies, which I will say were published in 2015, the most recent one I can find from these research associates, which leads me to question, why are we not seeing more out of them since 2015? But they studied Lyme disease where they injected the Borrelia burgdorferi into mice, and they were looking for antibody responses to the Borrelia. And basically what they saw is that we weren't getting long-term antibody responses to Lyme. Now, a lot of you are going to say,
that's immune suppression.
Wait on, I'm going to go into that. Okay. So a lot of you are going to say, duh, we've known that. And yes, I went back to my medical bacteriology book that I bought when I was going through biology in like 2002 in that class. And they talk about this vacillating antibody response to Borrelia, and that it's not always going to be accurate. It's an important point because a lot of you get your IGeneX testing, or you're getting testing based on CDC criteria. But what they found at UC Davis in these researchers was that the germinal centers within your lymph nodes were almost not functioning to secrete these long-term antibodies or these plasma cells, these B cells, to Borrelia burgdorferi. Now, their first conclusion was that this is what leads to recurrent infection potentially with Borrelia, which is a big thing because most infectious diseases, right, you get it, and you never get it again. You got measles when you were a kid, you never have to worry about it. Well, Borrelia doesn't seem to play by those rules, and one of the first questions asked by this research group that I don't think there's an answer to right now is, what are the specific antigens of this Lyme bacteria that are causing your lymph nodes to not be able to produce the right amount of long-term antibodies to cause you to be immunocompetent to this infection. Now, the other interesting component was that they then injected these mice with the flu vaccine, and they found that these mice, when exposed to Borrelia burgdorferi, did not produce an immune response to the flu vaccine. So that's another seminal, huge finding. And that, well, that clearly shows that these mice are immunosuppressed because somehow the Borrelia is damaging our lymph system, our immune system, so on and so forth. So that's all well and good. And we have to acknowledge that. That's a piece of this. That's a piece of this.
And that's important. It's a piece of this, you know, as I see the criticism that comes in. And one of the things when I say that, make that comment about people who may not realize that maybe they don't have the background to really evaluate the data that's in there, or maybe the intention of the data, or why hasn't more data come out? Maybe because it's not coming out the way that they want it to come out. That frequently when we get attacked, it's from one piece of research that has come out somewhere and said something. And frequently one piece of research is not going to be able to address the multiple vicious cycles and the multiple organ systems that are involved in these in these types of diseases, or frankly, even specific immunological pathways that have so many moving parts to that. And that's, I think, a little bit of where we're going here at this point.
Mm-hmm. And from that, really, these studies out of UC Davis, in my opinion, blow the top off of all testing we have for Lyme disease. IGeneX, I know IGeneX does DNA PCR, which they talk about in this study. But for the most part, most of you come in looking at the Western blot interpretation for Lyme disease. And, you know, I just don't think it's accurate. I don't think antibody testing. Our
experience relative to the patient's symptoms and the response to care would suggest that it's not accurate.
It's not accurate, because if you're not producing antibodies, what criteria are we talking about then? And antibodies to Borrelia, which then raises the question of, okay, let's go back to autoimmune. So there's this new study that comes out of Journal of Clinical Infectious Disease, or gosh, I just had it up. I think it's Journal of Clinical Infectious Disease, 2017. If you type in Lyme Th17 into PubMed, it will probably come up. If you can't find it, let us know. We'll send it to you. And they found that within these patients who have Lyme arthritis, okay, now stop there. I get that only 15% of you have Lyme arthritis in your world, and that the rest of you think that you have Lyme neuroborreliosis, which I'm going to get to. But we have to use Lyme arthritis as a treatment model, or as a research model for what's going on with your immune system. And they're finding that these Lyme arthritis patients had very high levels of cytokines. Cytokines are inflammatory, well, sometimes they're not inflammatory, but they're immune messengers. And we can see shifts within the immune system. Think of it this way very simplistically. It's far more complicated than this, but you have one side of your immune system that's like the Marine Corps.
Those are the guys who kill the bacteria.
They do mono-a-mono combat.
That's hand-to-hand combat, for those of you who don't know what mono
with a bacteria or
I'm
virus.
sure there's only one of you. But.
Then there's a Th2 side, which is more precision killing, memory responses generally. Are there exceptions to all this? Absolutely. It's very complicated. And there are validities to the Th1, Th2 phenomena, and there are inaccuracies and over-extrapolations of the Th1, Th2 phenomena as well. But what they're finding is that with Lyme arthritis, there's a Th1 dominant response, which kind of fits with what they found at UC Davis, where we have lack of memory B cell function for Borrelia antibodies. And they also saw a shift in patients who have chronic Lyme arthritis with Th17 responses. Th17 are inflammatory immune responses. So think of this as kind of like a militia, like a bad militia part of the military that seem to promote autoimmune responses. And that's been confirmed now in Lyme arthritis. So now we see that, and we see again that Journal of Autoimmunity last year, 2016, where they came out and said, definitively in patients who have this chronic Lyme arthritis, they're producing these MMP10 antibodies, and that's a piece of the illness. Okay, So now still most of you think, okay, well, I have Lyme neuroborreliosis, which is why I have fibromyalgia, headaches, POTS, you name it, that's why I have it. Well, then there's a study out of Europe, and journals, I think it's Seminal Events in Neurology, it's 2011. If you type in 2011 Lyme neuroborreliosis, or just email us, I'll send it to you. They took 122 patients who thought they had Lyme neuroborreliosis, and this was a hospital clinic who just focused on this. And all these people had been exposed to Lyme disease. They confirmed that. There was a Lyme component. Lyme disease, not Lyme's disease, Lyme disease. And they found that a strikingly small proportion of these individuals actually had CSF, so on lumbar puncture, their cerebrospinal fluid didn't really show signs of them having a chronic neuroborreliosis infection in their cerebrospinal fluid. So they concluded from that, well, these people really don't have it. Now, there are two explanations to this, or a few explanations. One is, well, Lyme patients, because of the way Borrelia interacts with the lymph nodes, maybe they're not making antibodies because of this immunosuppressive component. Another is, well, do these people have neurological symptoms because they have an autoimmune problem, which is so commonly what we see with other autoimmunities. If you watch our podcast or broadcast on POTS, for example, or brain fog would be a better one. Anybody who has brain fog typically has an allergic or an autoimmune disorder. It's that immune inflammation that goes into the brain that causes the brain fog, which is what a lot of you may be experiencing, from brain fog to fatigue to pain to headaches. Watch all of our broadcasts on those topics. It all comes down to immune inflammation. So quite possibly is what is going on. If you have Lyme disease, you have autoimmune inflammation. Yes, maybe you have immunosuppression, but you probably have autoimmune inflammation as the cause of most of your neurological symptoms. Which brings us back to what we've been finding.
It would almost have to be that in our clinic.
Yeah, because we take patients, we're not putting them on antibiotic regimens. Most of them, in fact, the vast majority are not on antibiotics as they go through our treatment protocols, and they seem to be getting improvements. And it can be highly nuanced. I worked with one Lyme arthritis patient. He had chronic neurological symptoms, burning pain, neuritis, neuropathy all over his body. And guess what? He couldn't eat meat. Meat was the linchpin for him. Now, it takes a while to kind of figure that out.
Yeah,
that's a different concept for you, because you have to go back and watch our leaky gut broadcast, and that until everything is fixed in your gut in terms of calming down inflammation, calming down immune responses in your gastrointestinal tract, in our opinion, you can't really tell what is what. And guess what? What causes the gut to break down? Stress. And most of you are stressed because you're living with this illness. You're forking out a ton of money, or somebody else is forking out a ton of money for you to get these treatments. They may be telling you, you look fine, right? The chronic fatigue patient, you look fine. Why are you sick?
Because I had all this, but I actually never got tested to see if I have Lyme.
And then other
I
people
should, huh? Be interesting. Well, to help us.
Right.
And it would be interesting, because I'm doing very well from fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and peripheral neuropathy and all these different things.
By the same token, would it even show up?
And I'm from New Jersey.
Testing? Would it even show up?
And I used to pick ticks off of me literally every day in the summer.
But the more important point is, well, then how are you feeling so well?
Right. Yeah, and that was the point.
So, and a lot of people say, well, your gut breaks down because of Lyme disease. Okay, I get it. Chicken or the egg, but we seem to be seeing these phenomenal results through functional medicine and functional neurology treatments, neurological-based treatments.
And you're being polite. I mean, we started seeing big breakthroughs when we moved to understand that it was the brain breaking down the gut. I mean, that's just
that was the fact.
We want to give you the understanding of how we got, to these conclusions.
Journal of Clinical Infectious Disease, 2017. That was the one for the Th17 responses. And as Dr. Gates said, he was talking about dampening responses in the gut. And for those of you, most of you are probably familiar with the fact that now 70% of your immune system is in the gut. So we're not suppressing the immune system. We are dampening overreactive immune responses and balancing the immune system, as opposed to boosting the immune system. Yeah, it's
in
really
fact,
balancing that.
I can almost with certainty say that if we had done things to boost the person's immune system, they got worse.
Mm-hmm.
they actually
we definitely saw that.
Yeah, they
We used to
actually
do immune
will have
challenges.
bad reactions. We used to challenge the immune system.
And we had one Lyme patient where she crashed for 2 months.
Yes.
2 months after doing
by
that.
using okay, we're going to boost this part of your immune system with herbs and botanicals. And these people got sick. Now that was an extreme, but people would get sick for days or weeks doing that.
I think that's the final point. So the conclusion from this group at UC Davis, after they did all these studies and they find that, you Lyme patients are not making antibodies chronically to the Lyme bacteria, which allows you to get reinfected. More importantly, there's an immunosuppressive component from what they found. The only way to really know if you have Lyme disease is to culture the lymph nodes, is what they were saying. They found DNA evidence in other parts of the body. But they said the focus going forward really needs to be on the host's immune system. And they talked about immune stimulation, but within the world of immune stimulation, it's really about immune balancing. That's what we found clinically to be the most important thing, because again, you have multiple sides to your military. You have the evil militia side. I'm not saying our military in the US or any other military, but this concept of you have an evil militia side to our immune system. You have the hand-to-hand combat guys. You have more the Air Force guys that do precision killing, remembering infections. And you want these guys to be balanced. You want them regulated. So that's our take on it. We hope you find this helpful. What did you want to say?
No, and I was going to say, for the most part, you can do it without drugs.
Right, which
for
is
the most part. I mean, we're not anti-medicine. For those of you who watch this, you know that. We work with the medical community regularly and have good relationships with many of the medical providers in our area. So we're trying to keep this as objective as possible. You don't know if when we're saying we get really good results, you don't know that or not. Although, well, you can look online and look at patients and stuff, but you don't really know that. We're trying to bring this into an objective form because, there's the research field. Is it there or is it not? There's a part of this field that's almost occult, in a sense that there's a language. There's an all embracing of the immunosuppressants, or there's an all embracing of the pulsing and the antibiotics for 2 to 6 years. We had to dig through this, okay? Because once we started seeing people get better, it was the first response was, what's going on here? These people aren't supposed to be getting better. And that's kind of led into this whole thing. So we're sharing with you what the research shows, and we have refined it relative to what the research shows, relative to how the patients are responding to the fine tunings that Dr. Gates is doing, all the treatment now that he's making to the treatment, a logarithm that we put together. And you can take it or leave it. All right, we're sharing with what we see. We're going to stick with what we're doing because it's working. And those of you who reject it out there, that's fine. You're not going to hurt our feelings, but this is the real stuff. And those of you who are kind of in that group of, oh my God, I'm going to have to be for forever. I think the Lyme literate doctors are crazy. I think the medical doctors are crazy. I think the researcher doctors are crazy. You might want to investigate these research articles that Dr. Gates is talking about, or maybe access some of the other videos that we've done on this, presentations that we've done on this, to see how they sync. And that's what we're doing. There's no hook here. Nobody sponsors us. We're just trying to share, to maybe shift the thinking in this area, because most of you don't have to keep feeling worse. But first you have to break through those paradigms that are keeping you, this conundrum that's keeping you stuck where you are. So, so that's the intent. We hope you see it that way. And we're going to do, this is all a run up to us doing a series. We're going to do a segment on Lyme in the next couple of weeks called the No BS series on Lyme. It's going to be largely research based and our experience of what we've done to get some pretty consistently successful results with these conditions. So I hope that you take this the way it was meant to be, and so we will probably be doing another aspect of what I call the Lyme conundrum next week.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see you next week.